Thank you for your presentation. With this, we end the part about interoperability of information systems. Now we will speak about intelligent infrastructure. And we will start with a presentation from Pieter Verlinden, Enterprise Architect of Asset Management in Infrabel. We will speak about digitalization in maintenance.
Okay, good afternoon. So, what I'm going to present has already been stated. Who am I? I'm Pieter Verlinden. I worked in the banking sector for over 20 years in high-volume transactional systems. And I made the switch to a railway infrastructure company like a few years ago. I'm an enterprise architect, but I'm internalized at the business side, so I make the bridge between business and IT. And I lead data science team. So, high-level overview, Infrabel invested a lot, as many of railway companies, I suppose, in sensors and measuring trains on our network. So, that's become a commodity. We get all the data, but what do we do with it? That's the question. So, initially, traditionally, we have time-based maintenance, which is typically every 3 months I'm going to have a look at my asset. And on the other side, you have the corrective maintenance. My asset broke down, I'm going to have a look at it. So the challenge is now in the performance, condition, and predictive based maintenance, for which we get all the different inputs from all the sensors to help us with that. We split the assets in 2 categories. On the one hand, we have the linear assets, typically the rail, the parts of the catenary that are not electrified, things that do not talk to us, so the not Internet of Things. On the other side, we have all the electrical equipment and through PLCs and computers which are connected to our intranet. Because these are 2 different categories, we also built 2 platforms. So we built 2 IT platforms, one for the linear assets and one for the singular assets, where typically the platform for the linear assets will treat bulk data from measuring trains and will visualize linear data, while on the other hand, the singular assets platform will get continuous stream of events and will be more in correlating events. If I skip all the details, well, we have 15 minutes, so, okay. So, what do you have to do? You have to visualize this, because I can make the most perfect predictive model and say your switch will break down in 2 weeks. If I can't show anything, my engineers will just not believe me, my management will not believe me. So what do you have to do? You have to make all your results visible. How do we do that? For linear assets, typically we do things like shock detection, as an example. You get a shock in the rail from the measuring train, or you get a shock in your catenary. What do? Well, you show it in the tool, and to the side of it, you show the point cloud, or you show the video where you can really actually see what's happening. So an engineer will have to believe you, because he sees a measurement, and next to that he can see the video of where the shock is happening. An example for singular assets. For singular assets, I make all my predictions, I make them public. So I have a website where everybody can log on from the whole company, and they can see which turnout I predicted will fail. So the engineers cannot believe me, but after a while what happens is this turnouts start to fail, and people see, oh, that was predicted 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, 1 day ago, and after a while they say, okay, we have to act on this. So at that point, they're going to ask themselves that you create alerts for them and that you create maintenance records. Of course, if all your predictions are wrong, everybody will see it as well. What's the flow in general? So on one side you have the incoming data from measuring trains and the IoT. You all store it in a big measurement database, which we can also call an ontology platform, or whatever we want. Actually, you store all the stuff, you interpret it with a model. The results go also back into the measurement database. Then you have reports going to the experts. And if you predict a failure on very short term, you just act as if it's a corrective maintenance. You send people on the terrain directly. If it's a prediction on a bit more of a long term, you send it to your ERP system and you let the people planify this within the next weeks to come. So you have to be part of the process, because if your application is predicting stuff next on the side of the process and people don't integrate it, it's useless. It's just a gadget. So you really have to create real alerts, real incidents, and the operations center and the people on the terrain have to trust you that they have to intervene, because this is going to break down. So a few use cases for this. First one, typical one, you see it in the literature and in all the speeches on every conference, turnouts. So what do? We have our EBP computer, which is the controlling computer of our assets, built by Siemens, by my friends over there. Then on the other hand, we also measure the current going to the point machine, so going to the engine. So we have a curve there that we can interpret. On the other hand, we have our SAP ERP system, in which you have all the maintenance records, so scheduled maintenance and corrective maintenance. So we have to correlate all these different sources, and as our friend of ERTMS told us, we also have to correlate all the different inventories, because all these things speak a different language. The name of a turnout in one system is not the name of a turnout in a different system. We do all that, we correlate them. I'm just going to go into the curve just for 1 second. So clearly you can see there, that's a defect. So I built an algorithm that just has a look, this is an outlier, this is a problem, and it's not a maintenance because there was no maintenance scheduled and stuff like that. And one of the things that you can see, for example, is this curve. You see the wobbly part? Well, the wobbly part is because this is badly aligned. If that's badly aligned, you will get a wobbly wave there, and you can see that within a few months this engine will break down. But you have months to correct this. That's me being smart and building algorithms. On the other hand, you also have the machine learning part, for which you also need some intelligence to set it up, but which afterward is going to help you. So we use unsupervised learning in this case, and actually each curve that you saw beforehand here is a dot in this cloud. So what you can see there, the big cluster, that means that everything is normal. The closer you are in a big cluster, that means that you have a normal curve, nothing is wrong. If you go to the sides, you will see that he notified me that there's an overcurrent. If you go there, you see the movement is too long. So automatically, the machine learning engine, or the deep learning engine in this case, will categorize the curves in different modes, and then you can just say, this one is bad in that sense or in the other sense. The nice thing is, if you have and the algorithm and the machine learning, you can compare one with another and you can come to way better results. So build different models, try different techniques, never stick with one model because you might not have the best. Another case is in our shelters, we already have some monitoring of the UPSs, the batteries, the converters, AC/DC, and the other way around, temperatures. Now we also monitor these from a distance, and then you can in time order new batteries because you know that they're going to fail soon. And we also verify the settings, because you have a setting there, like each month you have to do a battery test, you have all kinds of settings there. If we detect the wrong setting, we will also correct it automatically. So we're not only monitoring these things, if we have new rules, we will automatically upgrade the parameters of all these things. So don't make a maintenance record for a technician to go and change a parameter if you can do it from a distance. Linear data. For linear data, we use measuring trains, as we said before. So one use case that's going to go live very soon is the measuring train. So for turnouts, people are going to take safety and reliability measures every so much time. We're going to replace this by a train. The train is going to make measurements through lasers and is also going to film the turnout, and then we can analyze that data here. The same for tracks. On the other hand, we also have a weight in motion thingy, where we will measure the weight of the train and that we know the weight of the axles from trains driving through. So this is just to give an example. There you see the 5 cameras and 3 lasers that we use for each rail to get a perfect profile of that, to take the measurements. So the data coming from this train is rather large. Network infrastructure is not in place everywhere we go, so we have to manually run with the SSDs to the office. From there, we copy it through a high-speed line to the server room. It's analyzed by a data cell and by quality control, and then it's ready to use by the technicians. So then we will say, okay, at this place you have to intervene because something is wrong with this turbine. So this is an example of the measurements coming out of this train. We measure at 40 kilometers an hour. We measure the different geometries and the safety margins. Another use case, quickly, weight in motion. Weight in motion is actually not a measuring train, it's the other way around. We measure the train, so actually it's IoT. We have devices on the rail where we will measure the rail, the weight of each axis passing by. This is done by acceleration sensors, in fact. So we have acceleration sensors in a few places, and from that, with some complex formula, we calculate the weight. On the other hand, we also have microphones, so we can also hear the train, and from that, we're also going to know more about the train. Later on, this train will pass on the different turnouts, and you can do conditional maintenance based on how many axles have passed in the switch through its branch or straightforward. So, what do we aspire? Well, we have measurements, live for the IoT part, non-live for the measuring trains, of course. Then we have an expert system that will gain time of the expert. So it's no longer the expert that's going to look at the data, he just gets some reports. It's my automated system that will look at the data. We have faster interventions because the expert always takes time to look at all the data. Now it's a completely automated chain. We send alerts to the operations center. The operations center, because it's not the engineer himself who is going to call a maintenance engineer, but it's always the operations center. They also have an overview of everything that's going on. We have less train delays because preventively, if we solve problems preventively, we will not have a breakdown that has a real traffic impact. We have less manual work because everything that's verified by the measuring train has not to be verified by people manually. And we have a better quality of our asset master data, because if I see something on the terrain and it's missing in the inventory, it's clearly that it has to be created, so we do control it. That's all for me. I will not be in the panel, so all questions for me can be forwarded to me by email. I can answer.
And we will have time at the end to ask directly questions to you.
I will do.
Okay.
Yes.